I'll ask what you make of her latest fashion advice. That's all still to come, but first, it's the big phone-in. This morning I want to know, do you think parents should be allowed to have their boys circumcised? An anti-circumcision campaigner from Bedford has branded a top family judge a hero after she ruled a Muslim father could not have his 2 young sons circumcised. The Algerian-born dad said to have his 4- and 6-year-old boys circumcised was core to their identity as Muslim children. But their mother, his ex-wife, argued there was no guarantee they'd want to stay within the Muslim faith, and they should be allowed to make the decision when they're old enough to know their own minds. Mike Buchanan, who leads the Bedford-based Men and Boys Party, has described this landmark legal decision as wonderful, as in his words, all non-medical circumcision is an abomination. We'll hear from Mike in a few moments, but I want your calls as well. It would appear that this High Court judge has made the decision that it's wrong for a parent to force an invasive and unnecessary medical procedure on a child just because they think it's an essential part of their religion. Mrs. Justice Roberts argues that children may not want to grow up in the same religion as their parents, and since there's no medical need for any otherwise healthy child to be circumcised, parents should be denied the right to put them through it. Instead, she believes children should be allowed to make up their own mind whether to have their foreskin removed or not once they're old enough to understand the procedure, the reasons for it, the risks and consequences of losing your foreskin. But do you agree with Mrs. Justice Roberts or not? Whether you've been circumcised, you've circumcised your children or grandchildren, or you just have a strong view about the rights and wrongs of circumcising young children, pick up that phone, come on and have your say this morning. Do you think parents should be allowed to have their boys circumcised? Here's the telephone number for your call. For your view, for your experience, it's 03459 455 555. You can text me on 81333. Start your text with 3CR. Texts are charged at standard network rate. You can email me here at the BBC, jvsshow@bbc.co.uk. And you'll find me on Twitter if you'd like to tweet me, twitter.com/JVS Show. Do you think parents should be allowed to have their boys circumcised?
Have your say on today's big phone-in. Call 03459 455 555.
The JVS Show.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Interesting tweet already from Adam. He says, non-medical circumcision for religion is the same as female genital mutilation on women. And frankly, I'm appalled it's not already illegal. Well, someone who I'm sure will agree with that sentiment is Mike Buchanan, who is from Bedford, leads the justice for the Men and Boys Party. Good morning to you, Mike. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, good morning, Jonathan. It's a pleasure as always.
Good morning. So just explain to people, why do you have such an issue with parents who do decide to have their child circumcised for non-religious reasons?
There are a number of grounds. The first one will come as a surprise to many people. But male circumcision is already undoubtedly illegal. It would need a parliamentary override to be legal, and no such parliamentary override exists. So it's a physical assault on a male minor, and therefore illegal. Now, the law in England and Wales makes no provisions whatsoever for exemptions from laws on religious or cultural grounds. So there's no question that male circumcision is already illegal, but the criminal justice system simply doesn't bring prosecutions.
But and we'll get on to the religious aspect in just a second, but if we can just focus on parents who make the decision to have their child circumcised for non-religious reasons, aren't there lots of people out there, and we were having a discussion about this morning in the office, aren't there lots of people who will have been circumcised because their parents just felt that it was more hygienic?
Well, their parents might feel it, Jonathan, but they're wrong. It takes no time at all just to clean with soap and water. I mean, if someone has a problem with, let's say, dirty fingernails, Jonathan, do we tell them that they should have the ends of their fingers cut off? I mean, it would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
So you think it's that straightforward?
It is exactly that straightforward. It's also deeply unethical. It's a breach of the human rights of male minors, and it specifically breaches numerous articles of United Nations and European Union conventions on human rights.
Isn't it a parent's right, though? And as I say, we will get on to religion in just a second, but I want to explore for the non-religious listeners, first of all, why you have an issue with them choosing to circumcise their child.
I'd have an objection for exactly the same reason as if a parent decided to circumcise his baby daughter. We don't give parents that right, do we? So why on earth should they have the right?
But it is a bit different. It is a bit different, isn't it? Because the operation is a relatively small operation. It's something that the little boy recovers from quite quickly, and there will be many men listening to this programme who've been circumcised when they were babies, and they will feel as if it's not had any kind of lasting impact on their life whatsoever.
Well, of course. I mean, Jonathan, they wouldn't know, will they? But we have on our YouTube channel. There are just so many men who are damaged by this. We have on our YouTube channel a lengthy interview, a video interview, with a man in the States who voluntarily had the operation carried out at 18, and he talks about the huge difference, the loss of sensation during sex. And we actually know from statements or from a written record from a leading rabbi in 1135, Moses Maimonides, that the purpose of male circumcision is basically to keep husbands faithful to their wives, because it weakens the organ, and it will lead to men being more faithful to their wives. But it's an abomination that this still goes on in 2016.
Well, in your opinion, but there will be, I'm sure, lots of men who have been circumcised listening to this programme who do not agree that it's had any kind of effect on their sexual enjoyment, for example, and they do not believe it has impaired their ability to perform in a sexual way.
Jonathan, circumcision removes something like 20,000 nerve cells from the penis. It's bound to have a major impact. The fact that they don't know about it because they have never experienced the alternative is neither here nor there. But it's also a psychological defense mechanism. I mean, it might even be psychologically healthy for men who've been circumcised. Do they really want to go through life thinking that people who they love have damaged them in this way? They have to attribute value to it. And it's one of the reasons that just a few weeks ago we had a protest outside the Thornhill Clinic in Luton, the leading private circumcision clinic in the country. And on the 12th of May, we should be leading another protest, a large protest in Golders Green.
Let me ask you, we've talked about for non-religious reasons why you have concerns. Why would you, for religious people who believe that circumcision is absolutely core to a young boy joining the religion, joining a community, why would you turn round to those people and say that their religion is wrong?
It's not that it's wrong. It's a question of permanently inflicting your faith onto a baby very often. When that child and adult may grow up in another faith altogether, may be an atheist, but they carry to their graves the hacking of their genitals on religious grounds. It is abominable. And again, Jonathan, we would not be happy would we be happy with religious people carving a big letter J on the forehead of a baby to mark it as Jewish, or I for Islam? It is we really have to have compassion. We have to have the same compassion for males that we have for females.
OK. Mike, thank you very much. Mike Buchanan is from Bedford and leads the Justice for Men and Boys Party. Well, Simon Hochhauser is the co-chairman of Milah UK, an organisation set up by the Jewish community to protect and promote its right to carry out circumcision. Good morning to you, Simon.
Good morning to you.
So you're taking a young baby, a little boy, and your religion is dictating that it is perfectly acceptable to cut a part of that little boy off when he's only a few days old. You must admit that on the face of it, it seems a terribly cruel practice.
It's not a cruel practice at all. In fact, it's been carried out not just for religious, as you pointed out earlier, for religious reasons, but often for people who perceive that there are medical reasons. It's never considered cruel. It's never been considered cruel. It's been practiced for millennia. It's very, very rarely do we hear any complaints about it later in life, only now that the Justice for Men and Boys has managed to bring out a few examples of people who complain. It's not cruel. It's no more cruel than, for example, ear piercing for cosmetic purposes. In fact, no more cruel than putting any child into a situation that might be some risk early in life when they can't make such a decision.
You say that. A Jewish friend of mine said that when his little boy was circumcised, he had to leave the room because the ear-piercing scream that his son made as his foreskin was removed was so heartbreaking he couldn't bear to be in the same room.
Well, that's, one example. And, of course, it is difficult. It is difficult for a parent to hear the cry of a child in any circumstance.
Well, you say it's not cruel. How can it not be cruel when a child screams with an ear-piercing scream?
It's not cruel because this is a practice that was carried out, as I say, and it's hardly a situation which we hear at all. Here, parents are concerned about the ear-piercing screams. In fact, the child settles down very, very quickly afterwards. I don't want to talk about specific circumstances, but there's been very, very, very few complaints about this until we've heard about the Justice for Men and Boys party.
Ultimately, people have just kind of got used to it, haven't they, within the Jewish community? People have maybe become a little bit numb to the reality of it. But if a child screams in pain, then you are inflicting pain on that child. Now, take the religion out of it. Would you do anything else to a young baby that would make it absolutely scream with pain?
Well, as I said earlier, ear piercing or indeed putting any child in a situation which could cause damage to the child, it could be considered to be cruel. But
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm sure there are lots of people that would never dream of piercing a baby's ears. Many people listening to this programme that would think that's pretty disgusting. But even if you work on that basis, there is still a difference, isn't there, between making a small pinprick-sized hole in a child's ear and cutting their foreskin off. There's a big difference.
We're arguing a question of degree. I think the question really is we don't know that children do cry out ear-piercing screams. In most cases, as I say, the child settles down immediately afterwards, and we just do not encounter these sorts of situations at all. It is neither cruel. We have no evidence whatsoever that the children are crying out in pain.
But I don't understand how a child cannot cry out in pain. I mean, to have your foreskin removed is going to be a painful thing. There are nerves associated with that skin. So, of course, a child is going to cry when you cut it off.
As I say, we very, very rarely hear these situations where people complain about the ear piercing, as you call it, the crying of the child. It's not cruel. It's not cruel at all. And indeed, in all cases, in both the Jewish community and other religious communities, and indeed way beyond the religious communities where these things are carried out, do we hear the situation that it's considered to be cruel.
Why do you think it's acceptable, if we leave the pain to one side, why do you think it's acceptable to brand a child, physically brand a child, in a religious way? What if that child grows up to decide they don't actually want anything to do with that religion? You've physically marked them for the rest of their life.
Well, this is, again, physically marked them in the use of the word branding, etc., is emotive. The fact of the matter is that this has been carried out. It allows them to be part of the culture and society and the religion in which they've been born in a way that they would not be able to if they were not circumcised. And
why would they not be able to?
They are actually extremely thankful and would complain if they were not allowed to be circumcised.
But firstly, not everybody wants to stay Jewish. And secondly, I don't understand why having a foreskin would mean that you couldn't be Jewish. Can you explain why it would mean you couldn't be a Jewish man if you had a foreskin?
Well, this is within our religious tenet. This is a question of belief, and not everybody needs to believe these things. But in our particular religion, we believe that it is necessary for a child to be circumcised, if possible, at the age of 8 days.
You're making those boys believe that.
We're not making it. As I say, our religion.
Well, you are. You're saying the religious text says this, so therefore you will have this done to you. You will do this to your sons, and if you don't do it to your sons, you can't possibly consider yourself a Jew.
Well, this is what we believe in. This is what all religions stick to. Religions believe in certain tenets.
But you're enforcing it.
Carried out. When you baptize a child, that is what you consider to be done. I mean, this is a question.
But you're enforcing it. Secondly, baptism does not hurt the child, does it? Putting a bit of water over a child's head is not quite the same as taking a knife and cutting a part of them off for life.
No. As I say, you can use these emotive terms, but the fact of the matter is...
but that's exactly what happens. It may sound emotive, but if it sounds emotive, that's because it is emotive. I mean, you are taking a child with a knife and you are cutting a part of them off.
Indeed. So as I say, what has been done for any complaint whatsoever, the thanks and the gratitude of all who stay in our faith, the majority of people, we have complaints.
I don't know, Simon, I don't know